Did you guys notice that Fields let it slip that he and Bert have been involved with Lumon for about 20 years? But according to Irving, Lumon only started doing Severance 12 years ago, which I think means either A, Lumon has been operating Severance for far longer than the public knows, or that B, Fields is somehow involved with Lumon. Because notice how Drummond knew exactly when Irving wasn't going to be home, which is why he was able to go to Irving's house and go through Irving's things. Could this have been a coordinated tactic by Lumon to find out what Irving really knows? Remember, Bert has been secretly following Irving since episode 2.
I know where you live.
I wonder if that has anything to do with Helena telling Mark's Audi that it was her father who created Severance. Just how deep does this Lumon conspiracy go? In this video, guys, we're breaking down Severance Season 2, Episode 6, and focusing on 3 of the biggest mysteries. Guys, don't forget to click that subscribe button before Lumon activates the overtime contingency. There's a lot to unpack, so let's just dive into it. Starting off with, why did Bert invite Irving to dinner with his partner Fields in the first place? At first, I thought it was some sort of freaky menage a trois, but the more I think about it, the stranger it becomes. This wasn't just some friendly dinner. It felt like a test, maybe even a setup. Bert and Fields kept leading the conversation towards deeper, almost philosophical topics, especially about faith and the afterlife. So my question to you guys is, do you think Bert and Irving are zealots? They claim they aren't, but their conversation about heaven and hell sounded a lot like something Keir Egan followers would say. They talked about how Bert's innie would be allowed into heaven with Fields, while his Audi would burn in hell. That's a direct contrast between the severed and the unsevered. Like one is pure and the other is damned. I don't know if that conversation rubbed anyone else the wrong way, but it almost seemed like the more devoted you are to Keir, the more likely you're going to heaven, which means that, to me, Fields is the devoted one, so that's why his Audi is able to go to heaven, but he's also saying that Bert's Audi will not go to heaven. It doesn't make sense to me how Fields could just damn one half of his lover's mind while embracing the other half. But speaking of Fields, the way he casually mentioned that he and Bert were involved with Lumon 20 years ago, that's huge. Because according to Irving, Severance was only officially introduced 12 years ago, which is why I think Lumon has been secretly running Severance for much longer than the public knows, or that Fields himself is involved with Lumon more so than he lets on. Could he be an undercover operative keeping tabs on Bert, the same way that Miss Cobell was keeping an eye on Mark and then kind of just bled? And while Irving was distracted with this dinner, Drummond took the opportunity to break into his apartment. This man had a key. Just walked in there like it was nothing, showing that Drummond likely has a key to every Lumon employee's house. Just think about that for a second. The people who work at Lumon might believe they have some separation between their innie and outie lives, but in reality, Lumon has full access to them at all times. There's really no escaping Lumon, even at home. We thought initially it was just a Mark S thing with Miss Cobell stepping over the line, but that's not necessarily the case. Drummond has been seen throughout this season keeping tabs on everybody. And Drummond didn't just snoop around Irving's house. He went straight for Irving's chest. That means he knew Irving was up to something and he was looking for evidence, and he found it. He found all of Irving's research into Lumon, everything he had hidden away. If Lumon wasn't already watching Irving, they're definitely watching him now. And that raises another terrifying question. What about Mark? Drummond has the power to enter anyone's home. If he decides to check out Mark's house, he's gonna find what he's been doing. Also, Rogabi has set up her entire reintegration system in his basement. So if Drummond decides to go to Mark's house and snoop around, he's going to see everything set up in the basement, which is going to open up a whole new can of worms for Mark. With Mark, do you think that Mark is going out like Petey did? He seems to be getting sicker the more he goes through reintegration, and a lot faster than Petey was. It started with the coughing, then it led to the nosebleeds, and now he's completely lost his motor functions and collapsed. I did notice though, the way Elsa was able to access Mark's head was the same way that it was shown in the intro theme, through the back of his head. That makes me wonder if the intro itself is filled with Easter eggs about what's really happening throughout the show. So I'm going to have to go back and rewatch the intro to see what other tidbits that they're sprinkling for us. But what's even weirder is that Mark's memories aren't just coming back, they're merging. He's experiencing both his innie and outie lives at the same time, with almost no separation. That's something we really haven't seen before. We know PD was struggling with reintegration, but Mark seems to be evolving faster and more quickly than he was. The fact that there's no separation of time and space, and in one moment he could be in the office and the next at home without seemingly knowing how he moved from one spot to another, it's almost like his brain is trying to piece itself back together into one whole person. But at what cost? And is this the next phase of Severance, where the lines between the innie and the outie completely dissolve? Then there's Helly, both of them. Because for the first time, we saw outie Helly, aka Helena Egan, directly interact with Mark's outie. And I have to say, the whole conversation felt off. Helena claimed that her father created Severance, but what was the point of telling Mark that? Did she just slip up, or was she just testing him? Because it felt like she was pushing him, trying to see how much he knew. And how exactly did she know he would be at that restaurant? Because she's rich, and that restaurant is pretty much your run-of-the-mill Chinese food spot. I think she's longing for that human connection. But then she messed up because she got his wife's name wrong. And it was a complete accident. But the crazy part about it is, you would think that she would do the research to get there, especially seeing how Mark's whole raison d'etre, the whole reason he's doing what he's doing, is to find his wife again. So I feel like that kind of pushed him over the edge, and we saw it. Let's talk about what's going on between Innie Mark and Innie Helly. The way Mark told her about sleeping with her outie was already uncomfortable, but to me, Helly's reaction made it even more strange. She didn't seem disgusted or angry. She seems confused at first, but when she came back, she wanted her own memories with Mark, and that's when things really got weird. Instead of rejecting him, she went closer into his arms and wanted to have sex with him. And she was interested in having the experience for herself. It's not lost on me that's after his interaction with Innie Helly that the nose started bleeding, but then also it's after outie Mark's interaction with Helena that he rushed home and went through the reintegration process again, which caused him to collapse. I think Mark is running out of time, and if this keeps up, he might not make it out alive. Speaking of unraveling, what is going on with Mr. Milchick? Because he had a conversation with Miss Hung this episode, and I don't know if you guys noticed, but that whole conversation was tense, and it was almost as though he was threatening her. And to me, I don't know what that means or how that plays out, because Mr. Milchick, like I said before, has been my favorite character. But when it comes to Miss Hung, she was the one that complained about him and put those complaints for his performance review and tried to sabotage his career growth. And Mr. Milchick is essentially saying the same thing to her. He will sabotage her career growth. It makes you wonder, why is it that they have Mr. Milchick arguing with a teenager, especially one who doesn't understand the big words that he's using, which is causing him to unravel. Later on in the episode, we see Mr. Milchick go in front of a mirror, and he's actually repeating what he said to Miss Hung. As he repeats it though, he starts to simplify the words until he's just repeating the word grow up, grow up, grow up to himself. I feel like as though Mr. Milchick is having a crisis of consciousness. He likes his job at Lumon, I think, and at the same time, it's doing something to him. It's stripping him of his humanity, his individualism. It's making him regress. Instead of using big, complex sentences, he's down to repeating the same basic word to himself. I do feel like Mr. Milchick might end up snapping. I don't know, that's my thoughts. I'd love to hear your thoughts about it, because all of this is putting Mr. Milchick's career in jeopardy. Maybe not as much jeopardy as Dylan's relationship with his wife is, because outie Dylan is losing his wife to his... I don't know if you guys noticed, but she seems more comfortable with his innie than his outie, even to the point where she's lying to the outie, telling him that she did not meet with his innie, even though we saw it. And the fact that they shared a kiss, she kissed his innie. I don't think it's cheating, but at the same time, it could be, because even though they're the same person, they're not the same person. That's a question I have to ask you guys. How do you feel about that whole dynamic? Is she doing anything wrong? I mean, she has to be, because why would you lie if you weren't doing anything wrong? But guys, that's just my thoughts. I'd love to hear your thoughts about Severance Season 2, Episode 6 in the comment section below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and until next time, peace.